Your change initiative is probably going to fail, not because the plan is wrong. Let me tell you why. I'm sitting in a senior leadership meeting in the civil service, surrounded by very smart people with spreadsheets and project plans. We're planning a major restructure that will affect over 200 people across multiple teams. The conversation is all about budgets, timelines, org charts. Someone's drawn up the perfect new structure. It looks brilliant on paper. And then someone asks the question that changes everything. But what will this actually mean for Lisa in customer services, who has 2 kids in nursery and relies on her current 9 to 3 shift? Or David, who's been doing the same role for 15 years and is terrified of looking incompetent in front of his team? The room went quiet because nobody had thought about that. There's a tool that can prevent this. It's called a people impact assessment, and today I'm going to show you how to use it. So what actually is a people impact assessment? Think of it like this. When planning a significant change, you likely focus on the logistics, moving 16 people from Preston to Manchester, restructuring 3 departments into 2, implementing a new IT system. You've got your project plan, your timelines, your budget, but what you might not have is any real consideration of the people impacts, not the logistics of people moving, the actual human impact, like Lisa, who has to figure out how to get to Manchester by 8 a.m. when she's just had a baby and childcare doesn't start until 7:30. Or David, who's been doing his job for 15 years and now feels like you're telling him he's been doing it wrong all along. Or Priya, who's terrified she won't be able to learn the new system and will be found out as not good enough. These aren't just nice-to-know considerations, they're the things that will make or break your change initiative. A people impact assessment helps you identify these impacts before they derail your project. It helps you think through who and how they will be affected, what risks those impacts create, and what you can do about it. The best bit, when you do this well, people feel seen, heard, valued, and that changes everything. Let me tell you what happens when you don't do this. People disengage, performance drops, your best talent starts looking elsewhere, sick absence shoots up, and that change you were so excited about, it either fails or limps along, delivering maybe 30% of what you hoped for. I've seen it happen over and over again, but here's what I've also seen. When you get this right, magic happens. People become your advocates instead of your obstacles. They contribute ideas you'd never have thought of. They support each other through the difficult bits. And your change actually sticks. There's research that shows people aren't resistant to change itself. They're resistant to being changed. That's a big difference. When you involve people in understanding the impacts and planning how to address them, you're not doing change to them, you're doing it with them. And this matters for you personally too, because as a leader or manager, managing change poorly will absolutely wreck you. The stress of trying to force through change when people are pushing back, it's exhausting. It affects your sleep, your health, and your confidence. I realized I needed better tools. This is one of those tools. Right, let's get into the practical stuff. How do you actually do this? There are 3 main steps: preparation, completion, and ongoing action. Step 1, preparation. First, you need the right people in the room. Don't try to do this alone. Get people with different perspectives and expertise. Include people who will actually be affected by the change. Their insight will be gold. You also need to have completed an equality assessment first. If your change impacts people with protected characteristics, they need to be part of your people impact assessment. Step 2, completion. This is where you work through 4 key areas. Area 1, identify your audience groups. Who's going to be affected by this change? And I mean really affected, not just tangentially involved. Think broadly here. Internal teams, external stakeholders, people who aren't directly involved but whose work will be impacted, former colleagues who are now in different roles, customers or service users. Here's a tip from people who've done this well. Getting this bit right makes everything else easier, so don't rush it. Area 2, identify the people impacts for each group. This is where you think about how the change will actually affect people's lives. Not just their job descriptions, their actual lives. Will it affect their commute, their working hours, their sense of competence, their relationships with colleagues, their career progression, their workload? Their stress levels? This can be challenging. We're not used to thinking about work this way, but push yourself to really consider the human element. Area 3, identify the risks. Every people impact creates risks. These might be reputational risks, performance risks, motivational risks, customer service risks, financial risks. Someone whose commute has just doubled might start looking for other jobs. That's a retention risk. Someone who feels de-skilled by a new system might make more errors. That's a quality risk. A team that feels ignored might start working to rule. That's a performance risk. Write them all down and make sure these risks go into your main project risk register too. They're just as important as your budget risks or timeline risks. Area 4, identify mitigating actions. This is where you plan what you're actually going to do about all of this. Some mitigating actions will be practical. Providing training, adjusting timelines, offering flexible working, creating mentoring partnerships. Some will be about communication, having those difficult conversations early, creating space for people to voice concerns. Being honest about what you can and can't change. And here's the reality. You won't be able to mitigate every single risk or address every single impact. Sometimes the mitigating action is simply making sure people have the opportunity to be heard and to vent their frustrations in a safe space. Step 3, ongoing action. This isn't a one and done thing. You need to build these actions into your project delivery plans, your communication plans, your resource plans, and you need to keep reviewing your people impact assessment as your project develops. Because often the devil is in the detail. A small implementation decision can have massive people impacts that you didn't see coming. Let me give you a framework to help you think this through. Ask yourself these questions. What existing requirements might conflict with this change? What other changes are happening that might clash with this one? What are the consequences of not making this change? What positive side effects might we see? What negative side effects or risks might emerge? How will this affect performance or quality requirements? Will this trigger other changes? Where? Do we have the skills and capability to deliver this? If not, what needs to happen first? What tools, equipment or resources are essential before we can implement? How will this affect work sequences, procedures, difficulty or complexity? What are the cost implications? How might people outside our organisation react, and what impact will that have? Go through these systematically for each group you've identified. Yes, it takes time, but I promise you it's time well spent, because the time you invest now will save you time later when you're not firefighting problems you could have prevented. Change doesn't have to be chaos. It doesn't have to wreck your health or your team's morale. It doesn't have to fail. When you put people at the heart of your change process, when you think through the impacts and plan how to address them, you set yourself up for success. You build trust instead of resistance. Now go and make change happen the right way.